The first thing Viktor Weller noticed when he stepped onto the observation deck of the Kelnari Institute was the silence. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of a quiet so deep it felt engineered. The walls, ceiling, even the floor tiles were subtly absorbing every sound he made. His footsteps didn't echo, they barely existed, a tall, willowy being glided up to him, its pale lavender skin shimmering under the synthetic lighting. "Viktor Weller," it said, its mouth not moving. "You are early." Viktor shifted his backpack on his shoulder. "Yeah. I figured better to show up early than get mentally dissected for being late." The alien blinked slowly, then turned and gestured for him to follow. "I am Professor Selvath. You are here for the cognitive interface trial." "Right," Viktor said, matching the alien's pace. "The telepathy test. You want to see how well humans can communicate without words." Selvath didn't nod, but Viktor got the sense he had been acknowledged. They walked through a long corridor where the walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, like they were breathing. "You are the fifth human to be tested," Selvath said. "The others did not succeed." Viktor raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you guys say this wasn't a pass/fail situation? Failure is not always a grade, sometimes it is a result." They entered a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. In the center was a reclining seat surrounded by what looked like coral fused with circuitry. Viktor stared at it for a moment before stepping forward. "Do I get a helmet or something?" he asked. Selvath gestured. "Sit. The interface will make contact once you are still." Viktor sat with rigid posture. The seat adjusted to him, softening in all the right places. Tendrils of light crept toward his temples but stopped just short of touching. "Is this going to hurt?" he asked. Selvath didn't answer. The tendrils surged forward. Viktor flinched, but there was no pain, just immediate, overwhelming pressure. It wasn't physical. It was like someone had cracked open his skull and was leafing through his memories, flipping through years like pages in a book. "Stop," he said quickly. Selvath didn't move. The pressure increased. "I said stop." Viktor snapped, gripping the armrests. The tendrils paused. Selvath's eyes narrowed. "You resist." "Yeah, because you're in my head." Viktor's breathing was shallow. "You said this was a communication test." "This feels more like a data harvest. Your brain structure is unlike any species we've encountered," Selvath said calmly. "It is chaotic, unordered." "Thanks," Viktor muttered. "That's how we stay creative." Selvath circled the seat slowly. "Your mind is filled with barriers. Walls layered within walls. I call it privacy. You misunderstand. These are not natural." Viktor kept his face neutral. "Maybe I'm just hard to read." Selvath leaned closer. "You built a defense." "I didn't build anything." "You lie." Viktor said nothing. Selvath's tendrils retracted. "You will remain here. Further analysis is required." The professor left the chamber without another word. Viktor exhaled slowly and rubbed his temples. He hadn't lied. Not really. He had built something, a mental firewall of sorts. It started as a thought experiment during his doctoral program back on Earth. What if you could train your brain to misdirect telepathic scans? Not just resist them, but feed false information or scramble the signal entirely. He'd worked on it for years, mostly as a hobby, using biofeedback loops, meditation, and cognitive reinforcement techniques. When Earth was invited to participate in the Kelnari Institute's telepathic interface program, he volunteered. Not to show off, not even to represent humanity. He just wanted to see if it could be done. Now, it looked like it had worked a little too well. He waited in the chamber for what felt like an hour before the door reopened. A different Kelnari entered, shorter than Selvath, with brighter skin and a more animated gait. "I am researcher Tiv," it said. "You are to undergo Phase 2. "Phase 2? Viktor sat up straighter. "I thought that was it." "Phase 2 is necessary due to anomalous results," Tiv gestured. The seat retracted into the floor, and a new apparatus emerged, a standing frame with circular coils around the head and chest. "You will stand here. The device will enhance the telepathic link." Viktor stepped into the frame. "What happens if I say no?" Tiv tilted its head. "There is no penalty." "But refusal will result in incomplete data," Viktor sighed. "Fine, let's do it." The coils spun slowly, emitting a low hum. This time, Viktor felt the contact like a wave of cold water rushing through his skull. He clenched his jaw. Images began to flash in his mind, memories, thoughts, fragments of dreams. He recognized some. Others felt distorted, smeared like wet paint. Your mind resists even under amplification, Tiv said. This is unique. Viktor focused on a single thought, a childhood memory of learning to ride a bike. He built it up in his mind, sharpening every detail. Then he let it go, watching it drift forward like bait. The coils pulsed. Curious, Tiv muttered. We are receiving an echo. An echo, Viktor asked, his head throbbing. The memory loops. It is not static. Viktor allowed a small grin. Must be interference. Tiv disengaged the machine. We have never encountered this phenomenon. You will meet with the Oversight Committee. Now, Tiv nodded. Immediately. 2 Kelnari guards escorted Viktor through a new corridor. The architecture became sharper, more crystalline. He was led into a chamber shaped like a hexagon, with 6 seats arranged in a circle. 5 were occupied by senior Kelnari officials. Selvath stood at the center. Viktor was directed to stand opposite him. This human, Selvath began, has created a self-sustaining cognitive defense that mimics organic memory but resists telepathic extraction. One of the officials leaned forward. Is it technological? No, Selvath said. It is learned. A second official asked, is it replicable? Viktor cleared his throat. If you're asking if other humans can do it, maybe, but it's not easy. Explain your method, the third official said. I trained my brain to isolate thought patterns. I use loops and misdirection. It's like setting a trap that looks like a door. Selvath's voice turned colder. You disguised your mind as a maze. You did not inform us of this capability. No one asked, Viktor replied. And you didn't exactly explain how deep your scans go. The officials murmured among themselves. The fourth one turned to Selvath. Proceed with the inversion test. Selvath hesitated. It may cause cerebral trauma. He consented to full evaluation, the fifth official said. Viktor felt a chill. Wait, what's the inversion test? Selvath stepped forward. It will reverse the telepathic link. You will perceive our thoughts. Viktor blinked. You're going to open your minds to me, only partially. It will test the firewall's response when under reversed pressure. Viktor swallowed. All right, let's do it. The chamber darkened. A ring of light formed above them. Selvath's hands rose and a pulse of energy struck Viktor's forehead. At first there was silence. Then came noise, not sound but data, concepts, entire sentences compressed into feelings. Viktor's knees buckled. He fell to the floor, clutching his head. He saw flashes Kelnari history, memories of war, fear, brilliance, loss, joy. It was too much. His firewall kicked in automatically, compartmentalizing every input. The pain receded. He stood slowly, sweat dripping down his face. You are still conscious, Selvath said. Barely, Viktor muttered. You guys think loud. The officials stared in silence. He is not only resisting, one said quietly, he is adapting. Selvath didn't speak for a long moment. Then, in a softer tone, he said, You have altered the experiment. Viktor looked up. That wasn't my goal, but it is the outcome. The first official stood. We must discuss how to proceed. You will be escorted to a resting chamber. Viktor didn't argue. He followed the guards, his legs unsteady. Every part of his skull throbbed. He collapsed onto the soft surface of the private room and passed out almost instantly. When he woke, he was in a medical bay. Human-designed, Earth-standard equipment. A familiar face hovered over him, Dr. Devon Ferris, Earth liaison to the Institute. Viktor, she said. You pushed too far. I didn't have a choice, Viktor croaked. You suffered a minor cerebral hemorrhage. You're lucky it didn't get worse. How long was I out? 36 hours, Viktor groaned. Feels like longer. Devon handed him a water bottle. The Kelnari Council is debating whether to continue the program. Because of me. Yes, he sat up slowly. You think I screwed it up, she hesitated. I think you cracked open a door none of us were ready for. Viktor leaned back. Then maybe it's time we learned how to walk through it. Viktor opened his eyes to the soft tick of filtered air circulating through the recovery room. The lights above him were a faint green, indicating that his neural levels had stabilized. His left eye twitched involuntarily, likely a symptom of the inversion exposure. He flexed his fingers one by one and winced. A nurse, clearly not human, noticed the motion and drifted over. The creature had translucent skin with soft veins pulsing beneath, and its hands ended in 3 tapering digits, each tipped with a gel-like bulb. Its eyes blinked in a vertical rhythm. "You are orienting well," it said, adjusting the display beside his bed. "The inflammation has receded. We are monitoring for residual phantom feedback." "I feel like I've been dragged backward through a blender," Viktor muttered, propping himself on one elbow. "How bad was the bleed?" "Contained. Minimal clotting. No long-term loss of function expected." Viktor reached for the water canister beside him, his hand trembling slightly. "Did anyone mention how many minds I ended up brushing against in there?" The nurse hesitated. Record indicated 7 overlapped impulses, though several were splintered. "You retained awareness, Bits, enough to get a migraine just thinking about it." The nurse adjusted the light level slightly. "You will be cleared for ambulatory movement within 2 hours. Oversight has requested your presence shortly after. Let me guess. They want to know if I downloaded their childhoods." "That is not how they phrased it." Viktor lay back and exhaled. 2 hours later, a technician with a flat, chitinous face arrived to escort him. The corridor they traveled curved upwards, and Viktor noticed the shift in gravitational pull, subtle but present. The Institute had artificial geometrics built into its passageways, affecting perception during transit. Just another way of keeping visitors off balance. The room they entered wasn't the same hexagonal chamber. This one was more intimate, with pale orange light and only 2 occupants. Selvath, seated beside a biolattice console, and a new Kelnari, smaller and with clouded eyes that didn't seem to focus on anything in particular. Selvath gestured toward the curved seat opposite them. "You are physically recovered," Selvath said without greeting, more or less. Viktor eased into the chair. "I'm guessing this isn't a wellness check." The cloud-eyed Kelnari spoke, its voice slightly out of sync with its mouth movements. "You have altered an experiment sanctioned by interspecies consensus. The implications are not trivial." "I didn't break anything," Viktor replied. "You asked for a test, I supplied the data. You concealed the extent of your conditioning, and you misrepresented the nature of the link." "I thought it was a handshake, not a head-on collision." Selvath's fingers twitched. "You created a barrier we could not predict, but more concerning is the adaptive feedback. Your mind did not simply resist. It mirrored, absorbed, and began to restructure its own defensive pattern mid-transfer." "I didn't plan for that part," Viktor said. "It just happened." The second Kelnari leaned forward slightly. "You were exposed to 7 minds simultaneously. You should have suffered irreversible collapse. Instead, you extracted meaning." Viktor rubbed his temples. "If you call meaning a soup of half-formed memories and emotional spikes, sure." Selvath tapped the console. A projection appeared above it, vague, shifting neural patterns. "This is your telepathic signature during the final 30 seconds of the inversion. Do you recognize this phase?" Viktor squinted. "No, should I?" "You initiated a recursive loop, native to your own memory structure. But it began incorporating foreign inputs. I was trying not to black out." The cloud-eyed one stood. "You constructed a synthetic dream space, a fallback zone that is not instinctual." Viktor frowned. "Are you saying I built a decoy world in my head?" "We believe so. It buffered the overload." "That is unprecedented." Selvath turned off the display. "The Council has suspended further human trials, but they have requested you to remain for extended observation." Viktor's eyes narrowed. "Observation or containment? Voluntary." "For now, that's comforting. You will be granted access to unrestricted sectors. Your cooperation may influence future policy." "So I'm a test case, a frontier." Viktor stood up. "I need real food, something with actual texture. There are human rations in the cross-species commissary." Section C. He left without further comment. The commissary was a sprawling shared space, segmented loosely by atmospheric filtration zones. He passed through 2 scent barriers. One smelled like crushed citrus, the other like burnt copper, before finding a human-compatible booth. A tray was already waiting for him. Vegan protein cubes, dehydrated apple slices, and a thermal flask labeled chicken-flavored broth. He sighed, sat down, and stabbed a cube with the fork provided, a tall, insectile being approached his table. Its carapace shimmered with green and blue flecks, and its eyes rotated independently. You are the Firewall human, it said. Viktor chewed slowly. That's one way to put it. I am Crix of the Yelthin cluster. I attended the observational review. Were you one of the minds I bumped into? No. But I analyzed the telemetry. You rerouted a sensory flood through a memory of an Earth bicycle. Viktor paused, then chuckled. You saw that. It was surreal. I do not understand the mechanism of balance you employed. 2 wheels is inefficient. It's not about efficiency. It's about learning to fall without fear. Crix leaned in slightly. Fascinating. You achieved equilibrium through repeated failure, pretty much. And you encoded that principle into your mental response. Viktor swallowed another cube. It's how I process stress. Go back to something I mastered through pain. Crix tapped its thorax. The Yelthin failed to develop such recursive resilience. Our minds fracture under paradox. Well, welcome to Earth, home of the Paradox Party. A new figure entered the commissary, drawing Crix's attention. It was taller than most, bone-white with no visible mouth. Its presence silenced nearby conversation. Is that normal? Viktor asked. Crix's mandibles clicked. That is a Varn emissary. They do not engage in casual contact. Looks like it noticed me. Do not initiate. The Varn approached without hesitation. It stared at Viktor for several seconds before placing a small hexagonal device on the table. It emitted a soft pulse, and Viktor felt a tickle behind his eyes. Then your construct is disruptive. Viktor blinked. You're in my head. Minimal incursion. You resist well. Why are you here? We observed your firewall. It is not static. It is learning. I didn't build it to be weaponized. That is irrelevant. It has become an evolutionary event. Crix took a cautious step back. Look, Viktor said aloud. I'm not trying to start anything. You already have. The Varn retracted the device and exited without another word. Crix sat down again, visibly unsettled. They do not make idle statements, it said. Yeah, I gathered. You are now under observation by at least 3 species with neural interfacing capabilities. I never asked for this. Crix gave a low, rattling sound. Few anomalies do. Viktor pushed the tray aside. I need to get back to Earth. That may not be permitted for some time. He stood. Then I want a terminal and a secure link. I need to talk to someone who knows what I did better than I do. Who? My old thesis advisor. He used to say the brain is just a stubborn machine that lies to itself until it works. Crix tilted its head. A human, unfortunately. As Viktor left the commissary, he noticed a change in the way others looked at him, not hostile, not even wary curious. Every step he took echoed more than the last, like the Institute itself had begun to listen. Viktor pressed the heel of his palm into his left eye until the twitching stopped. The observation wing they'd assigned him to was barely furnished, just a cot, a spherical ambient light suspended from the ceiling, and a wall panel with a rotating display of alien flora he couldn't identify. He'd been told it was calming. It made him feel like he was waiting for dental surgery in a jungle-themed clinic. Still, it was an upgrade from the neural lab. An hour earlier, he'd received permission to initiate a secure link to Earth's Neural Cognition Center. The Kelnari had insisted on a monitored transmission, but he didn't care. He just needed to talk to someone who understood the mechanics behind what he'd done, someone who wouldn't treat him like a mythological event in a lab coat. A soft tone signaled the connection. The wall screen flickered, then displayed an aging man in a wrinkled button-up shirt that hadn't seen an iron since the last decade. Dr. Bram Keller leaned forward, squinting. You look like someone who got kicked in the soul. You should see the other guy, Viktor said. Or rather, the 7 other guys. Bram exhaled. I read the brief. They sent us a neural map so dense it crashed 2 of our processors. They weren't supposed to map me like that. I thought it was a mutual interface. It turned out to be invasive. And yet you're still alive. Which is the part I'm struggling with, Viktor. You had no neural dampeners, no pharmacological support, and you ran a recursive loop to deflect 7 minds. I didn't run it. It ran itself. It was like my brain built an emergency fire escape from muscle memory. The loop you designed in grad school, modified. I guess my subconscious added new architecture during the feedback. Bram scratched his head. Do you understand what that means? You didn't just develop resistance. You evolved it under pressure. I'm aware, and now I'm being treated like a diplomatic puzzle box. Bram leaned back in his chair. They'll want to study you for months, not anymore. What happened? I told them I'd only stay if I got full neural autonomy and no further interface attempts without my consent, and they agreed they had to. I triggered a shared memory cascade during the last test. It hit one of their council minds. They didn't like that. Bram blinked. You hit them back, not intentionally. I just thought really hard about something personal and it bounced. Holy hell, that shouldn't even be possible. I know, that's why I'm calling. Bram was silent for a moment. Then carefully, have you noticed any lingering effects? No hallucinations, no memory disruptions, but I'm reading people a little too well. Not telepathy, more like emotional contours, like I get what someone's about to feel before they do. That's not good. It's not bad either. Just weird. Bram looked down, fiddled with something off-screen, then looked back. Viktor, you need to be thorough. You need a full scan with Earth-standard instruments. The Kelnari tech is built around assumptions we don't share. I'll be back on Earth in 72 hours. They're releasing me early. That's surprisingly generous. They're not being generous, they're being careful. They think I'm a potential vector now. A vector for what? For human neural adaptation. If I can build this, others might too. Bram nodded slowly. So you're a proof of concept. Exactly, and they don't want to trigger a panic. There was a pause. Bram leaned in again. Viktor, is there any part of you that doesn't want to come back? Viktor hesitated. I don't know, there's something about this place, the way they think. It's like standing on the edge of a library that's alive. But I miss silence, real silence, not this engineered stillness, and I miss being confused for normal. You were never normal. I was never this. They shared a brief, knowing look. Then Bram sighed. I'll schedule a full workup for the day you land. Make sure you don't go full psychic savant and start predicting stock markets. No promises. The screen dimmed. The connection ended. Viktor stood, stretched, and walked to the wall panel. He tapped it twice and the display shifted to a star chart. He stared at the blinking pin labeled Earth distant, dull but familiar. A soft chime rang behind him. He turned. Selvath stood in the doorway. You are preparing to leave. 48 hours now. Your people shaved off a day. You will not be followed. That's reassuring. We have determined that your firewall is not a threat. Because it's defensive, because it is still human, you did not lose yourself to the interface. Viktor crossed his arms. Was that expected? Not entirely. Some feared you would fragment. I almost did. You did not. That is what matters. Selvath stepped inside, hands folded. You altered our understanding of neural resilience. We have studied thousands of minds. None formed internal misdirection with such nuance. Humans are good at fooling themselves. Turns out that's a strength. Your kind may possess more latent defenses than previously assumed. I'm not a representative sample. No, but you are a beginning, Viktor nodded. I'm okay with that. Selvath tilted his head. May I ask you one final question? Go ahead. When you created the loop, what memory did you anchor it to? Viktor smiled faintly. A moment when I failed, repeatedly, until I didn't. Selvath's eyes narrowed. That is not a stable foundation. It is for us. The Kelnari bowed slightly, then turned and left. Viktor sat back down on the cot. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt intact. That was enough. 2 days later, he boarded the shuttle with a small pack, a medical clearance, and a data crystal containing every scan they'd taken of his brain. The Varn emissary was nowhere to be seen. Krix didn't show up either. Just a quiet escort and a handful of Kelnari technicians who avoided eye contact. The departure chamber sealed behind him. As the shuttle detached from the Institute's docking ring, Viktor leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. No pressure. No minds, no feedback, just him. And for the first time in weeks, he felt like his thoughts were his own again. When the Earth station came into view, he tapped the comms. This is Viktor Weller, returning for re-entry. No anomalies. One passenger. The operator on the other end paused, then responded. Copy that, Weller. Welcome home. Viktor looked out at the narrowing distance between him and the pale blue dot growing ever larger in the viewport. He didn't feel like a firewall anymore. He felt like a door. And this time, it was opening inward.